Call meeting to order. Ladies and gentlemen, because tonight is the day before the 9/11 anniversary, immediately following the salute to the flag, I ask that you remain standing for a moment in respect of those who lost their lives on 9/11. We'll start with the salute to the flag tonight. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us never forget.
No surprise in the Christian Club teams have been satisfied by forwarding news release to the report press on December 12, 2013, stating our regular meeting of the Township Committee will be held on September 10, 2014, 7:30 p.m. here at Town Hall. Notice of occurrence has been posted on Township Bulletin Board. A copy is on file in the office of the Township Clerk.
Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Chattel.
Here.
Deputy Man Engel.
Here.
Deputy Man Orgo.
Here.
Deputy Man Fitzgerald.
Here.
Mayor McNabb.
Here. Number one this evening is an announcement. The next meeting of the Township Committee will be held on Tuesday, September 23rd. That is due to the Rosh Hashanah holiday. It's a Tuesday, not a Wednesday, next meeting. Number two on the agenda this evening is the approval of the meeting minutes from August 13th and August 27th, 2014. Any comments from the committee? Make a motion, please. Second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Chattel.
Yes.
Deputy Man Engel.
Yes.
Deputy Man Orgo.
Yes.
Deputy Man Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Mayor McNabb.
Yes. Number three this evening is a presentation. It is a JCP&L update from Mr. Jerry Ricciardi. He's the area manager for JCP&L and the person with whom we communicate when we have anything going on here. Thanks, Jerry, for coming.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you to the entire governing body of ToCN for allowing me to speak this evening. I want to provide you a brief update about the vegetation management work that's currently going on in ToCN Township, and then talk a little bit about communications at the end. This year, we are trimming what is known as the ToCN substation. And just to give you guys a brief review, it services, and I'll show it to the public in a minute, it services 85 to 90% of the town. Everything that's circled in green, so you can see it's the majority of ToCN. We have a little piece here, a little piece up here, a small piece here, and a small piece there. But really, the majority of your town, like I said, 85, 90%, is served from the ToCN substation. And I'll just show this true. You can see, it's just a little piece up here, this little piece of blue here, and a little piece down there. Otherwise, the entire town basically is serviced by the ToCN substation. Our typical tree trimming schedule calls for a 4-year cycle, so every 4 years we trim all the circuits out of a substation. Our normal tree trimming specifications calls for 4 years worth of clearance, depending on the type of tree and the growth specifications of that tree. It usually comes to a 10-foot clearance, but some of the slower growing trees, the clearance can be a little bit less than that. We do not trim for Verizon or cable TV wires. We only trim around what's known as our primary wires, which are located at the top of the pole. Working very closely with the municipal officials this year, we've been identifying trees that are either dead or in decline throughout the township. And by doing this, we saw from some storms we've had over the last few years the damage that trees can cause to our infrastructure and the power outages that ensue from that. So just to give you a couple examples, on Route 537, east of Route 34, we're in the process of removing 22 trees. On Route 537, west of Route 34, we have removed, or in the process of removing an additional 16 trees there. At other locations throughout town, we have identified 30 additional trees for removal. This includes trees on Cedar Drive, Dutch Lane, and Prothero Road. It's been a collaborative effort with the town to work together to improve the reliability by removing these trees. And the residents, I just want to let you know, Mayor, the residents have been very cooperative. In the past, sometimes it was a challenge for us to get our tree clearings and things like that. Everybody has been great to work with this year. They see the results, and they want to take care of their neighbors too. I mean, it's all of us working together. So the township has been great because, again, these are not Jersey Central Power and Light trees, okay? And we could stand firm and say, we're just getting our 10 feet worth of clearance. But working together with the township officials, we've come up with a collaborative effort to attack these trees and take care of the ones that are in decline and dying. Next, JCP&L, we continue to make communication improvements. On blue sky days, like a day like today, if there's an outage of more than 100 customers, I send an email out. It's a countywide distribution list. Members of the township committee get that notification, and I keep them updated throughout the event. When we have larger outages, it seems that Committeeman Engel and I are in touch quite often during the event. And like this summer, I think there was like basically 2 thunderstorms that came through. And, you know, shortly after the event starts, Committeeman Engel's getting in contact with me. Sometimes we text, sometimes we speak, but we're always in communication about what's going on. And the most important thing for everybody to remember is when the lights go out, okay, we don't know what happened yet, okay? We have to get line trucks out there, and if the outages are widespread, we have to, you know, once we sign off all of our line trucks, then we send hazard responders out there to get a feel for what we have. Is a tree just laying on a wire and it's a quick fix? Or did a huge tree come down and break 3 poles? So we have to get people out there to look at that to see what's going on. Like I said, twice this year that there were large lightning storms that came through town. And Committeeman Engel saying, you know, why is it just Colts now? I can't say why the storm picked on Colts Neck those 2 times, but this past Friday night, I had 35,000 people out of lights just in the areas that I service, and Colts Neck had 23. Not 2,300, no, 23 customers. So overall, you know, it depends where the storm hits. So, and there's 2 lightning storms, we had the majority of the customers restored, I think, in about 6 hours. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys might have, or from the public.
Just the public should be aware that we've, you know, after the numerous outages that we've had, we've asked you to come in and really be attentive to the trees around the lines and to take on this work to hopefully minimize in the future the impact of trees on their lines. Nobody likes to lose power. Even folks with generators, we don't like to lose power, and it really is disruptive to the town, to our emergency services, and it can be a catch-22 sometimes because some of these trees that are being taken down are probably trees that you've seen for the last however many years you've lived here. But they had an arborist come in, a professional, and make the determination as to which of the trees presented the greatest risk, and those are the trees that were ultimately going to be taken down if not already. And hopefully, again, that we, in the future, will minimize the risk in conjunction, hopefully, with homeowners also taking it upon themselves to properly maintain the trees on their property.
One of the things Mr. Riccardi didn't mention was how proactive both he and JCP&L have been. The tree cutting is definitely a clear sign that they're being proactive. Since I've learned, I think we've all learned that the majority of our outages occur for fallen limbs. So that's being taken care of nicely. He also, from a communications perspective, they've changed their lens a little bit, and you're now sending out messages days before a storm in preparation. So it's nice that sometimes I get emails that a storm is coming and they're preparing. I didn't even know a storm was coming. And I turn on the weather channel and he's right, there is a storm coming. They brought trucks into town in preparation for storms. They brought trucks into the state. They're working very closely with us, as he did mention. I can confirm that. We're notified of every power outage, where they are, not only what caused the power outage, but how long the power outage. And if you haven't, as a customer, had the opportunity to go to their power outage website, I would definitely recommend that you do that. It's unbelievable how quickly you can determine where the power outages are. You can, just by putting in your phone number, let them know that you have a power outage, and it pops up right on their map in real time. During heavy power outages, it's a little slow. I know it's server issues. I mean, that's just, you know, we have 30,000 customers without power. But yes, I can honestly say there's been tremendous improvement. And thank you for that. And thank you because it isn't just JCP&L, it's you.
So
Okay.
you've been an excellent partner, and I do appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Till the next one.
I think tomorrow we're getting, we're already getting ready for tomorrow, because tomorrow they're saying, we're gonna get a cold front come in. Could be one of the last thunderstorms of the year, but, it's been heating up the last couple days, so.
So the first notice for the winter?
Jerry, appreciate you being here today.
Thanks a lot for coming.
Just one, I have one comment. I understand the three companies, JCP&L, Verizon, you spoke about the cable companies. A very common sense question here that I know the answer to already. But I would hope somewhere along those three lines, management is talking about some very common sense shared services. So one of the things from an aesthetic point of view, I'm glad that you're trimming the tree from a certain point up, but then it looks different than if we would have trimmed the whole tree. So I would hope somewhere, maybe you can pass this along to your management above, is that Verizon, cable companies, and JCP&L will talk and say, okay, let's look at a cost sharing, so when there's a crew right there, they can just go down a few more feet, share the cost, and it would look a lot better and perform, save them some infrastructure problems as well. So if you could pass that on, that would be great.
Okay, so, yes.
And I know this board has been having conversations, whenever you added it to the agenda at some point, to have that conversation with
Yes.
send a letter, send some communication.
So right.
Maybe because, look, again, I mean,
It's just sending two crews out.
No, you're right.
Same thing.
but again, I mean, just to point out, I mean, how many trees did you mention were taken down? And we know how much that costs. So,
Oh my gosh, we got 34, okay, we got 30, 52, 68 trees, so roughly 70 trees.
so yeah, so your services are definitely bearing the burden, so I appreciate that. We appreciate that.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Shardy. Now, we're not gonna do questions now. If you want to talk to Mr. Shardy offline.
I'll stand up, I'll stand outside.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
he's good.
Yeah, I'll stand outside for like 10 minutes.
What is it for? Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna move on.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Number 4 this evening is presentation as well as review of energy aggregation bids. This is Mr. Robert Chilton of Gabel Associates. Mr. Chilton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome. I thank you for having me here. This is a revisitation of a bid we originally did back in April. This is for the energy aggregation to provide power supply for the residents in town who already have a third-party supplier. I should mention, I guess, on the heels of Mr. Shardy's presentation, this is for the power supply only. JCP&L will continue to provide the delivery service. They will continue to bill for all the services. There's no impact on this. This is for the power supply portion of the bill. So we went back out to bid. If you recall, we went out to bid in April. We had 4 bids at that time. The low bid produced savings of about 5% as compared to the JCP&L tariff price for power. Decision was made at that time to defer an award, to watch the market. The market had been elevated as a result of the cold winter we had. So the decision was made by the committee to defer and to watch the market, which we have been doing the last several months. And in fact, because the summer has been pretty mild, energy markets have come up off a bit, so the decision was made to go back out to bid. The bids were received today. We had 3 bids from 3 suppliers, Verde, Tri-Eagle, and Con Ed Solutions. We bid for two different potential start dates. One was December start date, one was for a March start date. We did that to try to maximize the savings given market conditions and try to find the sweet spot for the contract start. We also bid for several different lengths of the contract. The low bid that we received was from Con Ed Solutions for a March start date for the contract, for a 21-month contract that would have a fixed price of 9.265 cents. That's about almost 5% lower than the price we got back in April. So I think we served ourselves well by waiting and watching the market. That bid would produce savings of just a little under 10% as compared to the JCP&L tariff. It would produce savings over the 21 months of about $300 per customer on average, or about $14 per month. We had, as I mentioned, we had other bids. We had, the next lowest bidder was Tri-Eagle Energy. Tri-Eagle Energy was the only of the three suppliers that bid on two different contract options. We had put in the bid specifications a standard contract language which allows for all of the customers to opt out at any time if they're choosing without penalty, and all those things were in there. The additional option for the contract language was that the supplier guaranteed that the price always be lower than the utility tariff price, and provide the township the legal ability to terminate the contract if the price would ever, the JCPL price would ever drop out of the contract. The Tri-Eagle bid for comparable terms starting in March for 21 months, with that additional protection in the contract, that price is about 5% higher than the contract price. The price is about 9.7 cents. It's actually about a tenth of a cent higher than the low bid we got back in April. So those are really the two most viable bids on the table for you. I can get into more detail if you want, but I think I'll just give you an overview. Our recommendation is to take the low bid from Con Edison to produce the highest savings. That's roughly 10% savings, about 9.5 to be more precise. As I mentioned, about $300 savings for the typical customer over the life of the contract. And it's our feeling that that margin of savings as compared to the tariff provides a significant buffer against any contingency of the tariff price dropping below. We think that's a very remote possibility. And there are safeguards we can implement if that remote possibility were ever to take place. So we think we should grab the lowest price, get the most savings for the customers, knowing that we have certain protections if there are any contingencies take place. So that's a quick overview. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, one of the things that we had discussed when we were originally discussing energy aggregation was this cap notion. And I understand only one of the bidders did it that way, but it was something that we were very much interested in. First thing, any sense as to why we only have three bidders and why only bid it with the cap? Why only one bidder with the cap?
Yeah, I mean, it's the number of bidders on these types of energy aggregation programs has shrunk a little bit, primarily this past winter with the havoc that was played in the energy markets with the substantially cold weather. A number of suppliers, not related to energy aggregation, but in other lines of the business, experienced some losses, had some problems, and they've sort of become more conservative. Some have sort of pulled back and they're more selective in what they bid on. But the three bidders we have we had, I'd say, a maximum of 6 bidders going back a year on energy aggregation programs, other programs we've done. The 3 we got here were almost in all cases, when we still had 6 bidders, the lowest 3 bidders. So they've been around for a long time, they're the most viable, they know how to do this. I think what you find is when there's a lot of turmoil in markets, the folks that don't know what they're doing kind of get nervous and pull back. The folks that know what they're doing that have appropriately hedged all their energy supplies and protect themselves, they weather the storm, they get through it, and in fact they come out stronger on the other side. So a little bit of retrenchment in terms of some of the fringe players that are currently not active, but our core suppliers that have been active for some time are still in business.
All right, second part of that question, so my understanding was that we were the first municipality to ask that you bid it the second way with the cap on, the JCP cap. So I know this is kind of a new concept. Any sense as to why only one of the 3 bid it that way?
Well, I mean, I think in short, it's another risk factor. I mean, I can assess the risk of the tariff coming below the contract price, and I'm confident it's very remote. Every supplier is going to have its own risk assessment, its own legal departments, and a contract. What typically happens is a contract term that presents additional risk, even if it's an extremely remote chance that clause is going to be triggered, tends to be looked at very unfavorably by the risk department, by the legal department, et cetera. So what typically happens is if they have a model that they're comfortable with, contract terms they're comfortable with, and if it gets outside of that comfort zone, they're going to be very conservative and do one or two things. Either they're not going to bid on that contract term, or they're going to put a substantial premium in to cover that additional risk, which is what Tri-Eagle did. They put a pretty substantial premium on that.
About 5% premium.
About 5% premium. The other two just said it's not a risk I'm comfortable with, And again, it's not necessarily a judgment on how likely that scenario is to take place. It's just they're looking at worst case scenario and they get in a room with their credit managers and they make decisions. And they say, you know what, we'll take our chances and just bid on this thing.
So, just assuming we opt to go, or we're considering the number with the cap, that was about the same number that you recommended that we reject last time, correct?
It's actually a little bit higher than what we did last time.
So the same recommendation, I assume, would apply this time, right?
But I just don't think that's a sufficient margin to justify, going through the process. I think the additional savings from the low bid presents really meaningful savings, a significant buffer, and still has a number of protections in there to protect you against the contingency that I know you're concerned about, that you're concerned about contract.
Now, can you quantify the percentage likelihood of the Con Ed number ever hitting the JCP&L tariff?
Yeah, I mean, we're right now, like I said, about 10% below. The way the JCP&L price is adjusted once per year based upon a portfolio of energy that has staggered 3-year contracts. So in any given year, only 1/3 of that power portfolio was in play. So the way I describe it is, it would take a very extreme change to have the whole portfolio drop below tariff. So, I would say just short of, never saying never. I would be virtually comfortable saying never, but I'll stop short of that and say it's probably less than 1%.
Okay, so if we have to go that route, we could look our residents in the eye and tell them it's as good as the cap without actually having the cap.
It's basically the way I would describe it is we're getting much larger savings that have a very low probability of not materializing, and there are protections in the contract that allow for a worst case scenario if the sky falls and energy prices actually drop by 30%. There is ample opportunity without any penalty and ample time to advise customers of the change in the tariff, the drop, and to allow them the opportunity to drop out of the contract and return to the JCP tariff in time to take advantage of their benefits.
So at 30%, you're saying that the price of natural gas would have to drop 30% for this number, the kind of number to approach the JCP?
Probably, natural gas probably one. The natural gas prices definitely strongly influence electric prices, but not one for one. So in order to get a 30% drop in electricity prices, you're probably talking 40 to 50% drop in natural gas prices.
From historic lows.
From current.
Currently, just the current.
And currently, we're at, we've had all the advancements in fracking technologies that have dropped prices, so we're already at very low prices.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Tobin? Jim?
I appreciate the presentation, but with the strong opinion that you have, it still concerns me that the bidders didn't feel that strong to go for that second option. So that's concerning.
Not a question, but concern. So the cap guarantee is what we used when we formulated our original decision, because it's what was unique to the municipality and what we could offer the public. Because the public, as an individual consumer, could go out and by themselves get into these types of contracts as individual consumers with these types of savings. So we could leave it up to the customer or the individual citizen to do this on their own. So what's the point of municipality being involved if it wasn't just...
What the difference is between an individual consumer going out to walk
I mean, because I'm thinking this through. So as thinking it through, I'm more comfortable as a municipality taking advantage of the fact that we can then offer the cap to the consumer. I'm all about guarantees, offer that guarantee. Because my concern then is the thought of having to communicate, as you suggested, falls on the burden of the township. And if we miss one consumer in that communication, that's completely unacceptable. And I feel like the odds of being able to hit every single consumer with that information will be quite difficult. And I don't think that's the game that we want to be. I don't think that's the business of being a municipality. So if it comes to, so for me, the question really is, do we go with a cap as a municipality, where we just allow our consumers to bid it out on their own without the cap? Because, so what you're really offering us is what the consumers can do on their own.
Well, that's where I would, and I'll explain a little more. So the contract that we put up in the mid-specs and the master performance group has substantial language and protections backed by the regulations of the DEP that provide protections that your sort of run-of-the-mill direct marketing third-party supplier deal doesn't have. It has assurances of, absolute guaranteed assurances of fixed price, no change in the price. That was a huge issue even this last winter. So many people that were on third-party supply contracts on their own, they got burned. They got into a fixed price deal that was in the fine print good for 3 months or 6 months, whatever, and then reverted to a market price. And then when the cold weather hit and the market went crazy, folks would hit these astronomical bills. And they had no recourse. They complained to the BPU, and there was nothing they could do because it was an arm's length third-party transaction. So the substantial difference in the government energy aggregation program run by the municipality is it has contract terms backed by the BPU regs, and the BPU can't enforce and go after the supplier unlike the individual deals. That guarantee a fixed price for the entire term of the contract, that have a guaranteed ability to opt out at any time without penalties. Many of these third-party supply deals have early termination fees, again, are sort of in the fine print, and you may not see them. So you have these layers of protections, a guaranteed fixed price. And I think I mentioned, but it's definitely bears repeating. The tariff price only changes once per year. It changes every June, and it is known by March. Usually the utilities run their annual wholesale auction in February. They announce their new tariffs resulting from that in March. So there's a 3-month lead time. So, and I'm very confident that given the spread between the contract price and tariffs, it's not going to happen. But if it were to happen, then JCP&L in early March announced their new tariffs effective June 1, and they happen to drop 15%. That's it. We have 3 months, and we have the list of customers that are on this contract. We can send each one of them a notification letter. If we can't reach them, we'll call them, and I'm happy to do that, and advise them of the change, and say, hey, great, you just had 3 months, or you had 15 months at the lower price, you save money, now it's flipped. We advise you, here's the phone number, call Con Ed and get out of the deal. So there's many things in there that are not present in a direct marketing third-party supplier deal. I think it's important that.
As a follow-up, does this bidding process that we have in place allow for any negotiation?
No, this is really the public contract.
But if we were to award it, there's zero flexibility to go back and say, if you go with that guarantee and you drop it instead of 9.5, 8.75, there's no negotiation allowed by the law.
It's not under local public contract law. So we have bid specs out.
But after,
There's two different ways. There's 2 different ways we could have done it. One was the auction process, which some towns had opted to do.
right,
And that allowed you to say, okay, if Con Ed said actually go back to the other guys and say, okay, they're at actually one, the X one's one. But historically,
going back to not a competitor, but going back to the company you're going to award it to.
well, we have to award tonight. So if we award it tonight, you're going back to them and saying, we want a better deal, but we said yes last night. So if you want, if that's what you're
Well,
thinking
not
about
doing
doing,
that negotiation, I mean, just from my private company, I do a number of bids, and there's negotiation, but it's how it's been bid for.
The BPU rules require that this be done through local public contract law. It's bid specs, seal bids, the door closes.
the reason is they go out and buy electricity based upon what they think the demand will be for this contract for the next 21 months, hoping to make it, they lock in the electrical supply for that same time period for what they think the electrical demand is going to be, and, they try to get a delta between what we're paying and what they pay.
Tom, any questions?
Question. When we did this originally, we did this with a resolution or we did this with an ordinance?
Neither.
No. When there's nothing in the language that says, because we discussed it, they had to have a guarantee.
We didn't do anything. We only asked them to bid it that way.
We discussed bidding it both ways.
When we went into contract with them?
We didn't? No, we bid it both ways. They're just
Middlemen.
They're the consultant for us, basically.
We appointed the bill by resolution, professional resolution.
Yeah, but not, we didn't dictate, there was no.
Because we led the people to believe that it was gonna be no higher than Jersey Central the whole time.
We asked them to bid it both ways. That's what we did. We asked them to bid it both ways, because this was a novel idea. We came up with the idea, nobody else came up with it. Of all the municipalities that have used energy aggregation, we are the first ones that came up with this whole concept of bidding it a second way with the cap model. So, we tested the waters. That's, we could either resign ourselves to the fact that we'll probably, if we want to stick to that cap, or the concept of the cap, at least in the current climate, we're probably not going to get anything sufficient to warrant going to the energy aggregation based on the numbers that we're hearing right now. At that 4.5%, it just doesn't make economic sense to do it. And if we only get one in this cap, then we're just not going to get that right now. So the bottom line is, if we're going to go with Energy Act and look for this 9.5% savings, we're going to have to. It's a judgment call. There'll have to be that tiny element of risk. He's quantifying it less than 1%. I trust him. He didn't steer us wrong last time. He didn't force us to take the contract last time. If it's less than 1%, you got to make a judgment call. Are you willing to take that less than 1% risk for the 10% savings? That's the question. Keep in mind that anybody can opt out at any time. I think that's it. Mike, I'm sorry, Tom. Did that answer what you were hearing? Anything else you have? Mike?
Just tell me the 4.5% from Triangle. I believe that it doesn't seem, it's not worth it to go through the process. It's not worth it to go.
Well, I think it's not worth it, I think, to the municipal residents. I mean, I'm indifferent to it personally, but I think the way I look at it is the judgment was what made 5 months ago now, that a 5.5% savings didn't, justify. The customer's going to be notified. So there's people are going to see a change. It's only a change on paper, but it's still something, right? So I think the judgment was made 5 months ago that a 5% savings wasn't worth doing. So the option with the more favorable contract language is 4.5%. So I think the value judgment hasn't changed in my mind.
The 5.5% that we talked about the last time, now no one gives the guarantee at that time, right?
That's no, that's not true. Triangle did at that time as well, but again, same thing, higher price.
Mayor, if I might, and this is all, it's kind of my fault for bringing it. There's three options for us. Option one, obviously, is to do nothing and let everybody, figure it out themselves on an individual basis. Option two is to take the recommendation that Bob makes of the 9.5% over 21 months. Option three, obviously, is to take 4.5% with the guarantee. That's another option. My analysis has been not far off of that, and I'll tell you, to me, I'm not looking down my nose at a 4.5% savings. For some of us in the room, whether they have, and some of the residents in our town, if they have a barn or they have something else, as you know, we spend a lot of electricity in Colts Neck that's not normal. When they talk about when Gabel and these folks talk about a typical savings, we're not remotely typical. Because the reality is our electric bills for most of us are much higher because where they're talking about a typical electric bill, it doesn't cost them electricity to flush a toilet. So we're in a whole different, situation. Now I get into Ford heating and air conditioning systems in my house, but a 4% savings if you're spending $5,000 to $7,000 a year, and admittedly that's not a whole part of it, but it's still a couple $100 to think about. I will tell you, my analysis is where Bob's is, that the 10%, the 9.5% is a significant enough savings that the way that the tariff process works, when JCP&L goes out for bid for June, they know what the prices are in May, but that price, whatever that price they get, is a 1-year price in a 3-year blended tariff rate. Am I correct on that?
Right.
So that for the price to go up in that, by my calculation, probably 30, it would actually have to go down 32%-ish, just based upon the savings that we're talking about. And I just don't see that happen in the first, second, or third year. I think that we're historic lows for almost all of the energy prices that go into making electricity. Electricity has gotten to be such a different game, and most electricity is now produced where they changed over the coal plants to natural gas because natural gas got so cheap. It's as cheap as it's been in a very, very long time. Not to get on a political soapbox, and again, admittedly Republican, but I think this fracking thing is headed for some problems because what I'm reading about talks about some, people having allergic reactions to some of the chemicals that are being used. I mean, it's a very unusual situation that's going on.
So the price might go up.
I think the price is going to go up. I mean, that's just a gut. So the question is, as a committee, should we do nothing? Do we take a step? Do we take a half a step? Or do we take a whole step? And I'll tell you that one of the things that Committee Minority was correct. One of the things that we talked about was this admittedly groundbreaking concept of we're going to require that it not go below that tariff rate. And I think we all, to a person, felt pretty strongly about that. I don't think the market wants to see that. Certainly, Con Ed and these other folks don't want to see that be part of the game. The other option is we can say, hey, 4.5% savings is better than nothing, and with a guarantee, if that magic happens where the price goes way down, you're only going to do better. And what did we miss? We missed the 5% savings between that taking the chance bid for 21 months. So you missed 5% savings between 4.5 and 9.5 for 21 months. That's a two-year delta. And oh, by the way, older in that time, anybody could opt out on an individual basis.
It's 21
months.
On the municipality, we're fixed for 21 months.
Correct.
So it's a 21-month fix. And to me, where this started for me was, do we have a fiscal responsibility to afford our residents the option? And we did get to that guarantee issue, which will lead to the population. We have 5 people here that vote, all different ways on all different things. And it takes a vote of 3. But I think that we have an obligation to at least give the population the option, because whether it's anybody that's sitting in here or somebody that doesn't even know about it, this gives them another choice for energy on any given month for them to opt for the following month. So that whether the price goes through the roof or goes through the floor, in the ensuing month, anybody can opt to any one of the other providers away from JCP&L. You can go back to JCP&L. Any one of us doesn't have to stay with JCP&L now. But the one thing that isn't out there is no, what I'll call a third option, which is this municipal aggregation concept in this town. Other towns have done it. In this town, you have the option of JCP&L or the competitors. Some of the competitors have done well, some of the competitors haven't. Some people have been happy, some haven't. But there hasn't been a third option. And I don't know, where we all stand in terms of I've watched it, I've lived it. I think taking the chance on the 9.5% is the logical thing to do, with a full explanation to anybody that we've spoken to that we really went into this thinking we were looking for a guarantee, and that was the all important factor. But we're going to try to include some safeguards in what we do to make sure that we'll let you know if it doesn't, or change things. But the reality is everybody knows when they look at the bill, and it's on there. They have to tell you what the tariff rate is. That's correct, right?
Well, just for some basic comparison, I know you and some other companies that have been working with other municipalities, I know this energy aggregation has been implemented in some other municipalities. But just to be clear, assuming that we went with this 9.5%, are the other municipalities comparable in what they've done?
Well, it's all a matter of when, where. So anything
Recently, I guess.
Anything that was done last year, which is the majority of them, is generally a little bit higher than the 9.5%, although in PSG territory it's a little less than 9.5%. There have been no successful GA bids that I'm aware of in probably 9 months since the market blew up in winter, except for one that was awarded, but I think there was a mistake as to the savings, and I'm not sure they didn't retract that, and it was much higher than this price. So I think this is given what's gone on the last 9 months, this is a really good deal. Like, you know, 'cause we did it, right, we did it 4 months ago, 5 months ago, and we saw what we got. So I think we've kind of caught the market on the way back down, now it's kind of leveled out again as we're starting to approach the next winter. So it's a little lower than what towns were doing a year ago, but it's better than anybody's done since last winter.
As far as contract terms, similar type of contract terms for, same contract terms? for-
Yeah, every one we've done, and any other, we've done the majority of ones in the state, but the other ones as well, the same contract language. It's as I said, it's lower than the tariff at the time, and what the benchmark we always use is, we want enough savings that it creates a huge buffer, so that the chances of the tariff dipping below the contract are virtually nil. That's one of the reasons we didn't recommend the 5%. We were a little uncomfortable, that was a little too tight. So that's the benchmark we use. We like to have it close to 10% or more. But every town that's been done so far has the same contract language that has a substantial savings at the outset, fixed price for the full term, unlimited, without penalty, opt-out rights for the residents at any time. The bid specifications also specify that if in some remote chance that the tariff does drop below the contract, the supplier is obligated to send out another letter to customers notifying to that effect. And we'd certainly be happy to support that any way we could.
Any negative feedback from any of the other municipalities that they should work with?
Honestly, the only negative feedback, I mean, there's a small portion of folks that are initially confused, right, because they see a new supplier. We typically will get the calls and we'll talk to folks and, we explain the situation, they're fine. In PSCG territory, we did have some problems with, related to the utility, not to the supplier. The folks that run budget billing, this requires that the supplier also provide budget billing, so there's no change there. But PSCG had some problems implementing that and double bills and customers. That has not happened with JCP. JCP, we've done 7 towns, all run very smoothly. They've been great. Mr. Shar still have to tell them that they've done a great job. So really, no. People are happy with the savings. When we make proposals to towns to provide this service for towns, we always provide the references of the BA, the business administrator, or the mayor, or whomever from the towns we've done. And when folks call, they always get positive references. So I think everyone's happy with it.
Assuming the bid is awarded, can I walk us through the next step?
Can I just ask a couple questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
3 concerns I'm hoping we can rough out. I agree with all of Committeeman Fitzgerald's comments. I think that, and what I'm figuring out now is that the one with the cap is about $200 savings for the average consumer, probably.
Over the course of the 2 years?
Maybe a little more.
It was about 140. About
140.
300 for the hot one, a little bit, and about 140 for the 20 hours.
But you're probably right in this town. 200 is probably.
No, actually, that's based on the usage of this town.
Oh, it is? Oh, yeah.
Those numbers we use this town's usage.
Is it 300 a year or the 21 months?
300 or 21.
I mean, if someone came to me and said that I could save that much money over the course of 2 months by doing absolutely nothing. So to your point, for 21 months, I think that's pretty nice, So I don't want to downplay that. I know you mentioned the margin may not be there. But I also heard pretty much everyone at this table say that we're at the bottom of the market. So when you're at the bottom of the market, there's only one way to go, and that's up. So my point is that savings may actually be a more increased savings based upon the fact that your JCP&L rates are going to go up. So that savings may, because of the cap, be more than $150 to $200 for the average consumer. Which brings me back to my third point that I'm still very concerned with, and that is the communication. I mentioned the word tariff. I've spoken to a handful of residents, and the first primary concern is you have to opt out. And part of the conversation that seems, even in our meetings, that helps people get over the opt-out concern is the fact that there's a cap. And then the question of tariffs and the question of, look, I'll be honest, I don't read all the fine print in my JCP&L bill. until this conversation. I didn't even know what a tariff was, or how to even, calculate what they were calculating. Right. So, I mean, confusion is part of, and I've read a lot of the solicitations come from some of those third-party vendors that you mentioned, and they're very confusing. And front page of the New York Times, I think, was that one article about how it takes sometimes 3 or 4 months, right? Sure, we all read that, when you want to cancel a contract. So that part does concern me. And what will end up happening is we'll become, the 800 number for questions and concerns about bills, billing statements, and we may not be able to handle that. But when you have a cap in place, and it's kind of status quo, and you can see in every bill that regardless of what happens, because we don't have a crystal ball, it takes the questioning out of it and adds that level of guarantees. It still makes me, because you even mentioned, it's built in, but it's in the fine print, and I can get it. And you said there's a lot of layers and a lot of protection, but it's just still a concern. And I'm speaking, on behalf of the conversations I've had with residents, so I'm trying to weigh all that. I mean, look, if it was my own bill, I might gamble a little bit more, and take that risk, even if it's a lower risk. But anyway, that's where my head is right now. I wanted to make sure that my community members understood that.
Jeff, John, anything else, Jim?
Very similar, you mentioned many times about communications, and we will contact them all. I'm assuming the town's going to have to take that.
No, I mean, that's why when that's
They're
their
gonna
hire us
call
for.
it- They're gonna call the town though.
Well, they can, but I mean, the literature will have our phone number and the supplier's number on there. We have a pulse, and it's
But
more.
you're not gonna be at the sports field on
Well, I
Saturday, so
agree.
that I got,
I mean,
So, we wanna get to everybody, we wanna answer everybody, it's just we have a limited staff it's a smaller town and for budget reasons, so I have the same concerns about communications.
May I ask this question amongst us kids? Is the thought process, 3 choices: do nothing, do 4.5 for the cap, do 9.5. Is the thinking doing nothing is not an option, or just do between 4.5 and 9.5? Is that where your head is now? Let me tell you why.
Or do we tweak the bid process again and make sure that, there's no other option besides that guarantee?
Well, we're all going to get one too.
Well,
The bid process.
matters how bad, right, it matters how, there are a lot of things that matters how bad they want it.
Well, the problem is we're 2,300 users, 2,500 users. They want us, but they ain't that bad. Unless we were to aggregate with other towns.
But you're closest to this, like you said, the county should aggregate. We get this. You started with this, you've had more of the conversation. I think it's not the 3 options. I think the options are, I sense it's go with the cap, or go with the cap, or table it, to try to find a better cost with the cap. So I don't think that's going to happen.
My sense is that we should do something, do one or the other. Just do a 4.5 for the cap or do 9.5. Don't do nothing. Because doing nothing is a disservice to our constituents. So
Because you have the option.
because at least you have 4.5. 4 is that $140?
$140.
$140.
That's what I was trying to
With
do.
respect to the offer.
And it could be more,
And it could be more.
based on what happens.
I agree with that, and I think that somebody has to break the schneid, and I will tell you that if you're asking my opinion is, my recommendation to all of you being closest to this is to go with the 9.5% deal from Con Ed. I like Con Ed. Con Ed's been performing elsewhere. It's kind of an alien concept, I think, in terms of the New York, what we all associate with being a New York entity, being the provider. This is a different business. The electricity that goes into our light bulbs doesn't really come from Con Ed. It comes from somebody else, and they trade with somebody else, and trades with somebody else, and that's how that business works. It's more of an accounting process than a delivery process. Having said that, I gotta tell you, it's really, really enticing to me, and I would love to be the first municipality to break to break this stranglehold. And I think that if a town came along and said, we're going 4.5% because the bird in the hand ain't bad, but I want the guarantee. You know what? More towns are going to be asking for guarantees, and more people are going to come to the game. And 21 months from now, we'll be the ones that started the business model change And we will, you know, theoretically reap the benefit of that. What does it mean? It means that to the average person, you know, we risk their $160 for the delta between the $140 and the $300 as you project, between the 9.5 and 4.5, if my math is correct. You know, maybe that's the thing to do, is go with the cap. That's what we wanted, 4.5%. I quite frankly think that, you know, it isn't worth doing. Well, it isn't worth doing to, you're here, well, I apologize, it isn't worth doing for Gable. It's probably not really worth it to the provider, but that ain't my problem.
Just to clarify, I'm indifferent, I don't think the suppliers are saying, too, they're gonna make their money either way, so it's really what's best for you and your constituents.
I mean, our constituents, taking that to its logical end, we're making a decision now, and this is why I think doing nothing is not an option. Do we have an obligation to at least save the average homeowner in this town $140 when they literally have to do nothing, and they have no downside? If the JCP&L number goes lower, these guys have to go lower. Third option is, we take our chances at 9.5%, because we think that's what's going to happen. If it were my house, that's what I would do. But I don't wear that hat sitting up here.
I don't 100% agree.
In the way that the energy industry is, there's no way to combine natural gas.
But yeah, nobody's done natural gas yet, right?
No, I mean, natural gas, the way natural gas is priced, in the tariffs, dirty word, it's virtually impossible to do a bid at any point in time and assure there's going to be savings at all. The gas tariffs move more frequently and more of a black box, so to speak, so it's almost impossible for me to go out to bid and say this makes sense. But here I can, that's a benchmark.
You will see it in your lifetime.
That 21-month contract that you in March, that gives us 1.5 heating seasons?
Yeah.
1.5. So that's really, I mean,
It goes out December.
Wait a minute, with all due respect, talking about electricity. My
Oh, no, you're right.
My summer stink, my summer stink.
Okay.
Yeah, but electric is
It's two cooling seasons, really, what we're looking at. For us,
No,
we're looking at cooling.
But you're thinking based on the.
It'll expire December
Oh, December, yeah.
16th.
Yes. It's two cooling seasons.
No.
21 months. Starts in June.
So it's starting March and December of 16.
Right, so it's
December
two cooling
16th.
seasons.
Yes.
So we don't get 2 winters.
No, but it's electric, so it's electric.
Gas.
Well, it's still based on gas.
No, but we already, that's what we factored in. Okay. Sorry, all right.
Can I maybe clarify, just
Yeah.
if I'm speaking out of turn, just shut me up, but I just want to make sure we all understand the difference in the contract term and the guarantee. The guarantee that we're talking about, what it says is that if the unforeseen or unlikely event, the tariff drops by 15%, it goes below the contract. The township has the ability to do one of two things. Either negotiate the contract lower if the supplier is amenable, and if they're not amenable, then you can terminate the contract. So,
The municipality determines the contract.
correct.
We
So-
can act as the aggregator in its true sense and terminate the whole contract. for
You
everybody.
can start contract. So really, I just want to make sure you understand the difference from the resident's perspective. It's pretty minimal, there's one difference. So either way, it's a fixed price. The contract price does not change, it's fixed. And we're just comparing it to the top. Either way, when we award the contract, we go through an initial notification process. The customers will get notification letters informing them of the award of the contract, the identity of the supplier, the contract price, the estimated savings versus the tariff. They're given information on how they can contact the supplier to opt out if they don't want to be part of the program at all. Blah, blah, blah. Go through the opt-out process, maybe 5% people drop out, that's kind of typical percentage. Everyone gets enrolled. A month later, they start seeing on their, or 2 months later actually, a month enrolled, and after the first bill, they now see, in our example, Con Edison Solutions on the bill, and that price, the total power supply is now $150 instead of $170 before. I'm happy, that's great. And that just goes along. The only difference between the two contract scenarios is if and when, a year from now, 15 months from now, the tariff price drops substantially. Under the, let's say the Con Ed one, which is 9.5% savings, what would happen is we would send a letter to everyone saying, hey, tariff prices dropped by 12%, you can do better on the tariff. Here's the information, we advise you, call, opt out, get out. Versus, and then they would go through that. Under the other scenario, the 4.5% with Tri-Eagle, the tariff drops, the municipality approaches the supplier, hey, can we do something here? They say, hey, I can't lower the price that much. Fine, we're terminating the contract. Then the contract is terminated, everyone gets dropped, and 2 months later, the customers will see, oh, what happened to Tri-Eagle, they're gone, I'm back with JCP now. So that's really the only difference logistically. All the other things, all the customers are still going to go through the initial enrollment process, the questions and answers, if there's any confusion on the initial, hey, I got a new supplier, will be there. All that will be there. The only difference is at the back end, how you notify folks and have them say, okay, I got it, and the price is down, get out, or the contract just ends. That's basically the difference.
To keep me honest here, I
Yeah.
can summarize that by saying, we're the ones in both contracts that got our constituents enrolled. However, with the cap, we're the ones that can pull them. So we got them in, we can get them out. But in the other scenario, we get them in, and then they gotta get out.
With our help in advising them, and along the way,
Right.
they save more money, right?
But like I said before, if, I don't read all the stuff that comes with my bills. And I've had this happen, where I've gotten a bill, and I said, oh, wait a minute, what's that $5 extra? Well, you should have, we sent you the fine print for the past 3 months, and we've been telling you that this was gonna happen. I didn't read it. I've got that on my cable connection, but with the sports thing. Anyway, my point is, that's gonna be difficult, I think. It's just common.
If we got them in, you want to go and get them out. Can I ask you a question? Are we a local aggregator, or do we file so that other towns can join us, and would they get the same deal?
Well, right now, you are the agency for the Colts Neck Community Energy Aggregation Program. Others could join you, and we could form a cooperative pricing system, the DCA, it could do that. Sometimes it's done.
Which Tri-Eagle have to honor that?
Oh, no, that's in the bid. That's a brand new bid. That's different specifications, different load, and all that.
Has anybody done that, joined with another town or?
Yeah, we
or
have-
county?
Countywide, they've tried, nothing's been successful. Somerset's trying it, Passaic sort of tried it.
Cedar, Bayhead, and somebody else went together, right?
They haven't actually done anything yet. Howell, Point Pleasant, and Farmingdale got together, but I think that they fell apart, I'm not quite clear. We did one of West Amwell and Lambertville on Hunterdon County, that was successful. They had a pre-existing cooperative pricing system, they had gotten together to do a solar project, so they already had a pre-existing relationship and a cooperative pricing system.
Friends.
Five of us, we got another 15.
Well, I think the other, if there's an attraction to the cap deal of 4.5, is over the next 21 months, I believe everybody is waiting to see how this plays out, and I think that we're going to have, there are people that call me very regularly about how we're doing on the program. I think if we as a committee decide to go with 4.5,
You get in, you get your foot in the door, you're involved, you get to understand it, you get to live it, you get the community acclimated to it, and then you start the bidding process again, and the word's out.
It's just the communications, right? The changing, I'm on auto pay for my few accounts that have JCP now. Shows up on my credit card bill, I got enough going on now, I just don't sit and open it up and read it, and line it, and highlight it.
and they love you, that you don't go out.
I'm counting on my government, the Board of Public Utilities, to keep that price as low as possible. So I don't think I'm missing out on something because I'm not paying that much attention to it. It's just there's a lot going on. So we're really asking the residents to, one more thing to really pay attention to and open up every month. There's probably some people similar to mine that may not even get those anymore, right? They get an email, this, that, they can do it online. There's a lot going on. And I feel like we're changing now. 21 months here, 3 months there.
We've been talking about it for 21 months.
True.
I mean, that's an exaggeration. We've been talking about it for 6 months of my term and 9 months of yours.
So I need to know everybody's inclination, so we need to adopt an appropriate resolution if we're going to go that route.
I'm leaving this again. Savings, I'm sorry, savings to residents.
No, what happens is I'm leaning towards a cap also, except clarification, the last clarification you gave is if there's a 3-month lead time and your company is going to take the responsibility for letting people know, it's very similar to if we have the cap and things dramatically change, then we opt out. But they, again, I understand that, but still, there's still going to be communications on that. If we do it, it's still a change and all of that. So here, we're just, for the added savings, the risk, you used that word before, if I can get comfortable with that and take place and really work well, for the 3,400 meters we have, I think that's the number.
It's actually 2,700 that aren't already in third-party supply.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I'm not willing to take that on if you want to put it right. We're happy to take it.
Here's the other problem. I would like to guarantee, but I've never heard of Tri-Eagle before. I've kind of heard of Con Edison before. I also read your memorandum here, and it talks about some ratings. And it talks about excellent ratings for Con Ed and good rating for Tri-Eagle. And that, for me, is enough to say that risk, even though I've said to so many people about this guarantee thing. I just can't tell you the amount of people that I've spoken to, both in group and individual. If we're going to, I'm actually leaning towards, we're either going to take the risk or we're doing it.
If you jump in, get completely wet.
Well, it just seems like it's the common sense thing to do.
You do have a good point. That's
my problem. I don't even know Tri-Eagle is located.
Tom, you have an example. What's your inclination?
My inclination is, I don't like without the guarantee. I'd rather go with Con Ed, like Jim said, because I think they have a better rating here. But, I got a better deal, so I'm not even involved.
You're
He's not one of your 27 meters.
But for purposes of this, I need to know, because I need to formulate a resolution that's actually going to
do we have to do this resolution?
Yeah, because they have to buy this contract tomorrow.
It's good plus.
It's, yeah, Con Ed.
I'll go with the 9.5.
Good.
Whatever it is,
Con Ed.
3/4.
There you go, you got your favorite.
You know,
I'm a gambler.
I've been 9.5. I will tell you though, if you guys decide you want to go 9.5, I'm starting tomorrow with the next deal with guarantee. Because that pissed me off.
So for me, I'm not a gambler. I don't like to gamble. Don't go to Atlantic City. I don't get sports. Don't do any of that stuff. I like my money. It kills me to give my money away to somebody and get nothing in return.
Try farming.
But at the same time, as those of you that are regular attendees probably have some sense, I'm a risk-reward guy. I deal with risk and reward all the time. And the upside to the Con Ed 9.5% and the potential risk associated with that are so de minimis. And practically, if you think this through, it's a 21-month contract. Nothing bad is going to happen as a person. You would know if something bad was going to happen soon, you'd have a good sense that it was going to happen soon.
Now I can talk about my business.
So bad. Either way, I mean, they're actuaries.
But the notion of something going wrong is so remote for me, and the benefit that I could give the taxpayers is so substantial going with the double rate, especially folks that are living on fixed incomes, and that's really kind of what I'm thinking. What I have in mind is the folks that are on a fixed income. That savings a year is I know it's over 21 months, but I think the numbers ultimately, for the reason Mike said, I tend to agree with him. The numbers will be more substantial, and that's a significant savings for those folks. And the nice thing is, if people don't want to do it, You don't have to do it. I understand it's an opt-out as opposed to an opt-in. I'd much prefer it the other way. If four guys said, I want to do the 4.5% and look at the cap and kind of be the groundbreakers on this type of thing, I'd say great. But my concern is that there was only one bidder with the opt-out provision, and that bidder, as Deputy Mayor pointed out, is the lower rated bidder, probably willing to take more of a gamble and more of a risk. There is some peace of mind associated with having a company like Con Ed doing your energy supply. My inclination is to do the 9.5%. Again, this is 21 months. We can revisit it in 21 months. We don't have to do anything again. If it works out really well for us, we go and do it again. We can go out to bid again. We try it all over again. And we can bid it another way. We can bid it both ways again. Maybe the inclinations and the players in the market change at that point in time.
Well, won't the market change somewhat in June? New Jersey Central sets a new rate in March or whatever it is.
Yeah, that horse is at the barn then.
Right, but I'm saying, by that time, we'll know whether we made a good deal or we didn't.
Yeah, I mean, but don't forget, their rates would have to go up, would go down 30+% for us to be paid bid. 30%. That's a huge number. When has anybody's electric bill dropped 30%? Not in my lifetime.
Well, the problem is, you're talking about the energy, you're not talking about the carrying costs.
Right.
Because that's a whole other.
I'm talking about the energy supply, yeah.
It's only the energy.
But when have energy costs dropped 30%? Unless somebody's supplementing with solar or something along those lines. I mean, I'm taking those people out of play. But those of us that receive our supply through conventional means, you never, again, I'm only 46, and maybe some of the folks that have been around longer than me have seen that. I don't remember seeing that in my lifetime.
No, what's gas now, 420?
Natural gas is, it's around $4.
At what, 10,000 BTUs?
That's per million BTUs.
Which means a 30% drop would mean it would have to drop $1.20 from $4. So it has to go to
In 21 months.
No,
And actually in 18
no,
months.
it has to do that this time.
It has to do this by March.
It has to drop 30% to, it comes to the 10% savings, we have a 3-year aggregated blended rate. So you have to go from $4 a million BTUs to 280.
Unless we have 80-degree days in the winter, I mean, it's almost impossible.
Is there language in this process that says a certain percentage? Having a certain number opt out
Doesn't matter.
doesn't matter.
If 99.9% of folks opt out, it's still on the last price.
Would you or your colleagues be willing to, if this bid got awarded, go to certain groups to explain a little about?
Absolutely. That's what we're here for. Whatever happens.
And just like Commitment Angle calls Mr. Shardy often, you and I will be in contact often, so I keep track of this.
How much is staying in front of the seniors?
That's what I do. You're going to the senior.
But that's what we do. We usually hear all the time. We've done it in Monroe, we've done it other towns. It's not a problem.
Yeah, I mean, a number of the seniors are here. You know, again, for me, that's who this is, to a large extent, directed to.
The big user is going to save $500. There's a big user who's going to save $500, and that doesn't matter as much to the person who, an extra 50, as silly as it sounds, an extra $50 over 2 years is a couple of dinners.
I had four counties.
All right, let me, Bob, before I go to the resolution, could you?
I asked as next step, we actually answered that, but lay it out real quick. Assuming award tonight, heading towards this March 1st, what will develop next?
So the next step is we would notify JCP&L of the contract award. They would provide us the customer list we need to develop the mailing. And then we would develop the opt-out notification letter. That is done pursuant to BPU rules. There's a template in place. We would formulate that. We would consult with the municipality and with the supplier. We would develop a draft of the opt-out notification letter, submit it to the BPU and Division of Rate Counsel for their review to make sure it's not confusing, that it is clear, that it provides all the information that the customers need. Once that's finalized, we would have the supplier actually do the mailing of that opt-out notification letter, including a postage paid, return envelope, opt-out card if they so choose. The only thing we'd have to decide on is the timing of sending it out, because we do have some time before the contract starts. Well, typically, we've been in a tighter time frame, so we sort of do it right away. I think we would do some outreach over the next few months, and then around December or so, I think we'd probably send out that letter, so it's close enough to when the contract starts, that it's fresh in everyone's mind and know what's going on. So that's the basic
Maybe as
steps.
early as the summer, you don't want to get caught up with Christmas.
Well, you don't want to go with the Christmas cards, but we can talk about the right time to do it. We have time.
Somewhere between early and summer.
Let's see what we're gonna do first, and then we can work out the logistics afterwards, because I don't think everybody's going to committee.
Votes first.
All right. Let me go on to number 5 on the agenda, and that's a resolution. We've had this drafted a couple different ways. I'm going to read it this way. This is authorizing the award of contract to a third-party power supplier for Colstead Community Energy Aggregation for participants. This is resolution number 2014-96, A as in Adam, and this would be for the Con Ed bid. That would be the 9.5% bid. All right. So before I take a vote on, or take a motion on that resolution for that one, does anybody else have any other comments on the committee on this particular resolution? Okay. Can I get a motion on that resolution?
I will move that.
Can I get a second on the resolution?
Second.
All right. I'll take a roll call.
Deputy Mayor Shatzel?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Engel?
As I mentioned before, my risk tolerance is one of being fiscally conservative here. I think the $200 savings is good. I think that the guarantee associated with the cap are good. If it wasn't needed, why we have it. No offense to the gentleman here, but I don't have any experience with the communication, as we do have with Mr. Riccardi. So I just can't really, rate that. So I'm going to have to say no.
Committeeman Wargo?
Yes.
Committeeman Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mayor Mack?
Yes.
Resolution passes 4 yes, 1 no. Thank you.
Okay. And then you can work out the logistics.
Logistics of the letter, December 20th.
All right. Thanks for coming out, folks. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And make sure you have the deputy mayor's phone number.
Excellent. I will send you an email before I leave. Is that your real number? You're obviously your POC is.
Jerry's cell phone.
All right. What you need to decide? Yeah. All right, we'll take a minute break, folks.
Everybody,
Awesome.